Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, it's part 2 of our road grader build. Well, last week we ran out of time while working on pieces, and that's okay. That stuff happens when you're doing one of these series builds. So I don't want to talk too much this morning because we want to get right into it. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get right into the build. And what we're going to start with is the tank of the road grader. Well, the next piece that I want to make will be the tank. So I have cut a piece of 1/2 inch thick poplar here. I've cut it to its final dimension of 2.5 wide by 3 1/4 tall or long. And I have drawn, using a 3/4 inch circle template, I have drawn some radiuses here in the corner. So what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to take this over to the belt sander and I'm going to clean up these radii, I guess we would call them, and get them down to their final rounded shape there at the top. Well, I now need to get that rabbet all the way around to leave that 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch material at the bottom. So what I've got is a sacrificial fence. This is all experimentation here now. So I'm gonna test it. I think I have the bit roughly at 1/8 of an inch out from the fence, and I'm gonna raise the bit up while it's spinning to 3/8 of an inch height. And I'm just going to do a test cut to see how close I am to that 1/8 of an inch. Okay, it's actually right on the money. I kind of fluked it there, but that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this piece through using the sacrificial fence here to be able to round this off all the way around and get that rabbet. I'll get it done and then I'll show you what I mean. So now we need to get a 3/8 radius round over all the way around here, but I've kind of been toying around with how to do it, and what I've done is use the exact same sacrificial fence. I have a 3/8 diameter round over bit here. However, I have removed its guide bearing so that I can actually get it further into this area to round off this section that I need to. Not sure if it's going to work, but I'm going to try it and see how we make out. Well, sometimes you have to think outside the box, and that actually worked really well. I still need to do a little bit of touch-up sanding here. Using that push pad to kind of maneuver this small piece was a little bit awkward, and because of that I got a little bit of burning there from the bit. But I'm going to get some 120 grit sandpaper and carefully sand here to smooth this out and make it look a little better. And then we can drill this angled 3/16 diameter hole that we have here. Now I know that normally I say leave the piece intact, but that didn't happen this time, so I'll show you what to do about it. While it may seem a little bit tricky, it's actually not that bad. I've measured the hole at being a 45-degree angle, and I have marked the depth of the hole here as per the plans, and I have marked the center of the hole here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get my fence, and we are going to line this up so that the center of our bit will be in line with our hole. As well, we're going to use a square and line up that 45 just like this. There we go. And once we're happy with that alignment, we're going to hold it in place and we're going to clamp it onto our fence. All right, just like that. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to raise this table up a little bit. We're going to get it roughly where we want it, which would be right about there. I'm going to move the fence back a little bit, tighten up our drill press table, and I'm going to set my depth stop. And at this point, we now need to set the front to back. so that we're centered here on our piece. And now very carefully, very slowly, don't try to jam this in. We're going to slowly lower the bit to let it catch, and then we'll finish off the hole once it catches. And there we go. That is our tank done with the hole in place. We're just going to give it a little bit of an extra sanding. Guys, you don't have to make this out of one piece. I was determined that I wanted this in one piece. That's my prerogative. But if you are not comfortable doing this in one piece, no problem. Cut a 3/8 inch piece for this top section, round it off and drill your hole, and glue a 1/8 piece on the back to get your tank. It'll look the same with a little less hassle, but hey, I like a challenge. Well, I don't think the next two pieces on page 2 are going to need an explanation. They are the toolboxes. You need 2 of them. They are simple blocks. Cut them as per the dimensions on the drawing. Well, I didn't want to leave these toolboxes just as these plain blocks, and as a lot of you know, I've been playing around with laser engravers. One of the reasons I purchased a laser engraver in the first place is so that I could add embellishments to my scale models, and that's what I've done with these toolbox pieces. I went on to the Lightburn software. I designed a little laser engraving program, I guess you'd call it, and ended up with these little toolboxes with a line representing the lid and the latches and the cat logo, and then this little embellishment down at the bottom. But I wanted to take it a little bit further. So I took my engine block and I designed this. And this takes it to a whole new level. I've really given it a deep engraving with the cat logo and these stripes, and with these engine block vent cover holes. And I've done it, of course, for both sides. It really brings a new dimension to the model build, and I think when the whole thing is put together, this is really going to look great. So I just wanted to show you this and let you guys know that if you're considering a laser engraver, this is one of the things that you can do to embellish your scale models and use your laser engraver to its full potential. This looks amazing. And now the last 2 pieces that we're going to make on sheet 2 are this air cleaner and the exhaust stack. However, we're not going to bother with the exhaust stack. This, much like the handles, these grab bars that are here, they're fragile and they're going to get in the way of clamping. So this is a detail that gets added later on, but we can definitely make the air cleaner. Now you have a couple of options here. For me, I'm going to turn mine on the lathe because that's what I want to do, and I like working on the lathe. But if you don't have a lathe or you're not comfortable with that, you can very easily just cut a length of 5/8 diameter dowel that's 1 3/8 of an inch long, and then you can cut the cap on the top. Whatever you need to do, this is a very simple piece, a lot of fun to make. So this can just be glued together in pieces using dowel and a little circle 7/8 of an inch in diameter. For me, as I said, I'm going to turn mine on the lathe. And there we have my version of the air cleaner. So guys, you know, whatever method you choose is just fine. It's whatever works for you. You don't have to turn it on the lathe. That's just my preference. Well, I now want to work on both the upper and the lower platform here on sheet 3 of the plans. There is really no way to duplicate these accurately by hand drawing them. Some pieces I like to draw out and mark out by hand. These are not some of them. So what I have done is I've photocopied the pattern. Both of these pieces are made out of 5/16 inch thick material. So I'm going to adhere this pattern, or both of them I should say, onto some 5/16 inch thick stock. And we will first off drill all of our holes that are required. Now it's a little strange here that Toys and Joys did not place the center marks for these holes. Normally they do. For some strange reason they have left it off of this print. But with a hole that is as small as 3/16 of an inch, it would be very easy to be able to get in there with a 0.5 pencil and guesstimate roughly where your center is. just like that. It's not a difficult thing to do, and we can, from there, drill all of these holes as close to the center mark as we can, and then carry on from there. Once all the holes are done, it's just a simple matter of scrolling it over at the scroll saw. And if you are not comfortable with your scrolling ability, not a problem. Just cut outside the line and then sand up to the line over at the belt sander to finish these pieces off. Now, if you want a little more accuracy on the center of these outer circles, you can set a compass. I've taken some measurements here. You can set a compass to 1 1/4 inches, a 1 1/4 inch radius. And from the center hole here on your upper platform, we can place our compass there, and you can draw just like this. There you go. There is the center line of all of our holes. And then you'll just have to center your bit left to right. But at least you'll have one of the centers on there to help you along. So there you go. A little bit of a tip on how to fix that one up. Now, one thing I will suggest for a piece like the lower platform and any other pieces like it is anytime there is flat surfaces here, that you can take advantage of the edges of the wood to make your cuts, you should try to do that. So here we have on the lower platform, although this is a circle, on the top and bottom edge, we have a perfectly flat edge here, making this 3 inches wide. So if we cut our piece of 5/16 inch thick stock to be 3 inches, and then carefully cut our pattern and carefully lay it down on our wood, we have already got these perfect square edges here to work with right from the get-go, and we don't have to worry about wavering with a bandsaw or a scroll saw. So if you have edges like this, take advantage of those. There you go, and a light sanding will finish these off nicely. So we will now move on to the upper cylinder mounts and the lower bar. These are very simple pieces to make. The upper cylinder mount will be made in pretty much the exact same way that we just made these two pieces here, the lower platform and the upper platform, but most of it is going to be scroll saw work, if not all of it. So just take your time and go slowly and you should be just fine. The lower bar, this one here, I think what I'm going to do is cut the pattern very carefully, cut the stock to its final dimensions. We need to drill that hole first, and once we get that hole drilled, the rest of it can be cut again on the scroll saw. It doesn't take much. If you don't have a scroll saw, a bandsaw will work just fine with a smaller blade installed to be able to get the tighter radius of the parts. Well, with those done, the next pieces that I want to work on will be this front axle, but I'm going to actually jump ahead. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. And I'm going to jump ahead to this upper frame. The reason for that is I have this piece of 3/4 inch thick stock milled for this frame, but in this waist area, right down here, what I want to do is I want to cut the piece for this front axle out of that waist area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply masking tape to this entire surface. I'm going to photocopy the pattern for the top frame or the upper frame and attach it to our block of wood. Then I'm going to cut it out. This is strictly scroll saw work. This is nothing special. This little hole right here, 3/16 in diameter, a stopped hole, that one there, depending on the height clearances of your drill press, can be done on the drill press, but unfortunately for me, I think I'm going to have to do it with a hand drill, making very sure and being careful that I drill in squarely to the board. But other than that, I will get this piece cut out. It's a simple scroll saw cut, and then I'm going to use this waist piece to make this part right here, that front axle, and then we'll get into making that part. And after some careful drilling at the end here and some careful cutting on the scroll saw, you end up with something like this. Now, truth be told, these arches here, I cut them a little outside the line and then rounded them at the belt sander. It just gives a smoother transition and really makes it look like a much better project. So this scrap piece now, this is what we're going to make our front axle block out of. So we need a piece, for starters, that is 1 3/4 by 4.5 long. So I am going to cut that piece right out of here over at the table saw. And at this point, we're going to take that piece and we are going to scale off of our drawing and we are going to duplicate the pattern onto here. You can cut out the pattern and attach it if you want, but this is very simple geometric shapes, very easy to duplicate. And I just find it so much easier to draw it out myself than it is to try to align a photocopied pattern. And it really doesn't take long to get this all drawn out. So this is the procedure or the method here. The first thing is you want to drill your holes while everything is still square. Although the plans call for a 5/16 diameter hole here in the end, I explained, I believe it is in part 1, that I do things a little differently with these axles. So this is actually going to be a 1/4 inch diameter hole. They are 1.5 inches deep, so they are a stopped hole. We'll get those drilled first. We'll get this 3/16 diameter hole drilled here, and then the rest, for me anyway, is simple scroll saw work. If you don't have a scroll saw, as I've said, you can use a band saw, you can use a hand saw, whatever you like to get these cut. Now don't be fooled like I almost was and think that these are 45s. I actually measured them and there's some pretty strange angles there, like 33.5 sort of thing. So in 38.5 I think was the other one. So pay attention to those angles there, and if you're not 100% sure and you have a bevel, you can hold your bevel up against the plans, set it for those angles, and just draw them in place. So we've already got videos of scrolling and drilling holes in the ends of things. I don't think we need another. Let me get this finished. And in no time at all, you'll have your front axle block finished. Well, before I go too much further, I'm going to start assembling some of the pieces that I have. And these assembly drawings here, while they're great because they kind of show where everything goes, they really don't give you any kind of good information. So in order to glue the engine block and the rear rad and all of that stuff onto our base here, we're going to turn our attention to the back. The last few sheets, sheet 8 and sheet 9, and these are 1-to-1 scale drawings of how this thing goes together. So what you can do is you can measure off of this drawing to get your placement here on your base and on your other pieces. You can see exactly where they go, and you can get their orientation from their assembly drawing here on sheet 2. So you can see the level and the layers that go together. This shows you their orientation and how they go together, such as the engine block goes on the base goes on the axle block, etc. But the later drawings will show you the measurements of where to place them. So I'm going to get this assembly glued together for what we've already made from sheet 2, and then we can carry on from there. And it doesn't take long to get pretty much the base put together. I don't know, guys, I was a little skeptical about hitting this with the laser engraver, very apprehensive about it because I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out. You have to make these patterns yourself. It's nothing that you can download and just do. So I had to create this, and I have to say, I'm blown away. I'm glad I jumped into the pool, right into the deep end, and tried this out because I think this looks absolutely incredible. So we will continue, but for now, the assembly of the engine block. I just want to add that stack, the air breather in there, and that's really about it for this end for now. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week, guys. A lot of time taken up making that tank. A challenging piece if you want to do it all in one shot, without a doubt. The most challenging part about it really is being able to run it through the router table on the curved edges. You really want to be careful with that. You cannot do it with just your split fence of your router table. You need that sacrificial fence to give you the support above the router bit, to be able to allow the piece to have something to ride on. Now, don't think you're going to do it in one pass. I had to make several repeated passes to get an even curve on there and an even routing. But it does take time, and it does take some thought. And if you want to do it in one piece, it's not impossible, as I've shown on today's show. It just takes a little bit of thinking outside the box and to try something different. If that worries you and you don't want to do it that way, there is nothing wrong with making it out of two pieces and gluing them together to get your final shape. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It will look just fine. I just want to do it in one piece to say I could. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. I hope you've enjoyed today's content, guys. It's not too late to get yourself a set of these plans and join in on the fun for a weekly build. So I hope you're going to take advantage of that. I hope that you're going to give this a whirl. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.